Okay, guys, real quick, just came right back from a little small break, got some more coffee, and I'm going to do the third part of chapter 3. I did go back and find my notes. Really, that last video covered one question only. It was question 10. All right, so you're going to get 11 and 12 in this one. I realize that's not a lot. There's not as many questions on this set, by the way. So they're still worth listening to, though, because once again, you are going to have to take a test on this. And, you guys at this point will have taken definitely one test, perhaps two, depending on when you're watching these, and realize that it's not, yes, some of the questions are kind of reworded and repeated, but there's also other stuff included. So you want to make sure you go through it. I try to look for a mixture of the two, all right? So we had Montag on the run towards the river when we left off in the last video. He's left Faber's house, but there's still this little bit of drama as, are they going to catch Faber? Is he going to be arrested too? Is Montag going to get out of the town? Once he gets out of town, what's next for him? So let's answer some of these questions, okay? So as Montag's running, screen just turned green. All right, whatever. As Montag's running, he's able to look out and kind of see people's TVs as he's running, and that helps him a lot. So as he's running, he picks up and sees, okay, this is happening, this is happening. Then eventually he stops because he sees that the hound's getting close to Faber's house. And he notices that the hound pauses and thinks, and like it says he even like flicks the little needle. Let me turn off the sound. Flicks this needle in and out like it's thinking kind of at Faber's house, but it leaves. And so Faber's in the clear. They've been running the sprinklers, trying to watch it. They've done everything they can. They did enough that the hound was suspicious, but at this point, they have a problem. They have to catch Montag. They can't look bad. They said when they brought in the second hound that they've never been beaten, that the hound is infallible. It's never been, it's always caught its prey. So at this point, they don't have time to mess around. They've got to catch him, or else the public may think that they make mistakes, and they don't want that. So Montag excited. He sees that that's getting away. So now he keeps on running, and he keeps kind of looking in the windows. He's able to kind of follow the chase. But then he pops in his ear thimble, the radio he has, and he starts listening. He's like, oh, goodness, they have a great idea, which I got to be honest with you, I'm not sure what this would do, but they say on the count of 10, everyone's going to open their door and look out. Okay, so I don't know what they're going to do if they see Montag, but I guess they're going to yell or something, and the cops are going to know where he is. I don't know. Another thing that's funny about it is why count to 10? Why not just say, everyone now, go open the doors. If you see Montag, immediately call the police. But they don't do that. They do this, we're going to count to 10. And that's how suspense is built in this section, because the counting is a really cheap way to build suspense in a book. And you don't do it all at once. You go 1, 2, and then you listen, something happens. And 3, 4, something else happens. We saw this, and I'm sure you probably don't remember, but if you go way back to the it's August of this year, when we first were meeting together, we read The Monkey's Paw, and we talked about that being one of the elements to build suspense at the end of it, is the counting as he slowly reaches for the door. All right, so Montag is running headlong towards this river, and all of a sudden, you just hear the counting in his head. 1, 2, everyone stands up. 3, 4, they all walk towards their door. This is a very suspenseful moment. Honestly, it's the most suspenseful part of the book, and it's actually in the falling action. It's not the climax, all right? He almost gets caught, but he makes it. He gets to the river and dives in, and, for what all purposes, we've ended a major part of falling action. It was still kind of a steep cliff off. Now we're going to start kind of even out a little bit as we build towards a resolution point. Now, this next part, I'm going to short a lot. It's like the subway scene. Bradbury's a brilliant writer. He's perhaps my favorite. He's up there. He's in my top 5. He's on my Mount Rushmore of authors for sure. But I don't like this part of the book. I like what he's trying to do. I like some of it. But descriptive narration is just not his best part. Plus, it's confusing because he's messing with the time frame a little bit, and he goes into this dream fantasy world about what he imagines things would be like, and readers frequently get confused. They're like, is this really happening? And no, it's not. But let's talk a little bit about what's happening here. Bradbury's using a technique that authors use all the time, okay? When your main character goes into water and then comes out, he's typically reborn. It's meant to parallel baptism. It's just a common technique. Now, I don't want to say every time that's the case, but it's a real common thing that, you go into the river and he's left this world he was in. He was, had slowly started breaking out of it. Once he hits the water, we're going to see this epiphany come to him where he starts thinking about what he's been doing and why he can never do it again. And then when he comes out of the water, he's a new man. Okay, so this is a very common image you will see. It's what we call an archetype. An archetypal situation in writing is this transition from one position to the next and using water as that medium. So he hits the water, and he even says he felt as if he had left a stage behind and many actors. He felt as if he had left the greatest seance and all the murmuring ghosts. He was moving from unreality that was frightening into a reality that was unreal because it's new. So that's kind of that part. So while he's in the river, he starts thinking about what he's been doing, and he realizes something. It's kind of a weird section. He says he realizes that the sun goes on day after day, burning and burning. It's the sun and time, the sun and time and burning, burning. The river bobbled him along gently, burning. The sun and every clock on the earth. It all came together and became a single thing in his mind. After a long time of floating on the land and a short time of floating in the river, he knew why he must never burn again in his life. The sun burned every day. It burned time. The world rushed in a circle and turned on its axis, and time was busy burning the years and the people away. Anyway, without any help from him. So if he burned things and the firemen and the sun burned time, that meant everything burned. One of them had to stop burning. The sun wouldn't, certainly, so it looked as if it had to be Montag and the people he had worked with. So he realizes that there needs to be creation along with destruction. And right now, all that there is destruction. He says, the sun's not going to stop. Time's not going to stop, so I have to stop. I need to do something productive, not destructive, is what he's decided. All right. As he's floating down, he also realizes, and you guys, this is probably some of you this would hit. Some of you get out in the outdoors and unplug occasionally, especially those of you that hunt or fish or things like that. You probably, and still, you might still have your headphones popped in. I don't know, but Montag points out how quiet it is. He says, he's thinking about when he was in the city and all the noises distracted him. He says, I wonder if people out who are used to that are out here in the silence that would distract them. He thinks about Mildred. He says, I wonder how you could take it. Would you say, shut up, shut up, shut up, Millie, to the silence? Because again, we don't like being alone with silence. If you're not used to that, if you're not used to being with your own thoughts, it is really uncomfortable. So that's one of the things Bradbury wanted to push us to do, was to get out of our comfort zone and spend time in our thoughts. Be reflective. We're going to talk about reflective essays when we're done with this. We're going to write one, in fact. Oh, no, don't panic. Don't panic. It's a personal essay. I'm going to skip making you write about Fahrenheit 451 and let you write a reflective paper instead, which will be a lot easier. All right? So the next scene is the part I was talking about, where he starts imagining what it would be like to get out of the river and hide out in this hayloft and someone leave him up some food the next day, some very simple things. It's very descriptive. It's very imagery-based. It's very out of place, to be honest with you, but we skip through that. He steps out of the river finally. Remember, the same thing with baptism. You go in a sinner, you're baptized, you come out, now you're a new person. You're a new creation in God. Problem is that the world is still there. So it's not like everything's super easy from then on. You still have to deal with going back to school or going back to whatever your situation was. So Montag gets out of the river and realizes he's back on land, and everything hits him. It's overwhelming. He realizes, it says too much water, and it says too much land. I mean, he realizes, what now? I mean, this man has had his entire life ripped out, and he doesn't know what he's going to do next. Okay? He hears something rustling in the leaves and thinks, oh crap, I'm busted. It's the hound. It's a deer. But he freaks out and the guy nearly has a heart attack because he's so concerned about this. So kind of important passage. And then he starts walking, and bang, he hits the railroad tracks. And then he says something kind of awkward again, something my students often mistake. He says, once long ago, Clarice had walked here, and he was walking now. He doesn't mean literally. That is not what he's talking about. He means it figuratively. He knows that he's getting to a point where Clarice was, where he's finally away from what the city had for him, and he's starting to think for himself, and he's starting to become his own person, and just like she was, okay? So now he's wandering around in the woods, and he notices something. He sees this fire off in the distance, and this is a kind of a cool thing that Bradbury does. So let me read it to you. He says, that small motion, the white and red color, a strange fire because it meant a different thing to him. Now, real quick, I did say that they didn't associate white with Granger, but white is mentioned here again. So we're about to meet our third guy, Granger. And he is going to be the one who, Clarice started Montag on the path. Faber kind of explained the situation to him, and Granger's going to point him to a future and say, this is what needs to happen. All right. Granger's stuff is a lot more philosophical. People really don't like it as much. I love it, by the way. I think he says some really neat stuff. But we do have the image of white here again. If you do need that one little clue, it's only that one time, though. So he sees a fire. He says, it was not burning, it was warming. And one of your questions is going to ask about that. But the difference is this fire is warming, it's not burning. Now, you're like, what's the difference? Well, burning has a negative connotation of destruction. Warming is the more of a positive, constructive thing. I think about one of my favorite things to do in the wintertime for the little bit of cold we have is, well, it used to be. My friends are all busy now, and I rarely get to see anybody, but I still enjoy sitting out in my backyard and having my fire pit and just sitting there, and I'll sit there for hours just sitting out there listening to music. It's peaceful. Now, a house burning down is not peaceful. So those are two very different things, although it's the same concept of fire. All right. He's sitting there watching, and he's watching how these people are all like working together. They're sitting there, they're sharing, they're passing things around. They're not talking yet. He does notice that they do start talking, and then they start again. It's conversation like what he and Clarice had, and it's different. You think about the conversations he had with his wife, conversations he had with Clarice, they're very different. But now he's noticing that these men are talking that way, and he really longs to be a part of this community. Well, eventually they hear him. They tell him, hey, come on out. We can hear you bumbling around out there. You're not being quiet. Come on, they say you're welcome here, which is kind of interesting because he's never felt welcome anywhere before, really. All right? So he sits down and he's introduced to Granger. And like I told you, Granger's our third guide. You know, you had Clarice, Faber, now Granger's our third one. And Granger says, hey, look, guess what? They're still chasing you in the city. And Montag's confused. He's like, I'm out here. He's like, yeah, well, let's show you. And they got a little portable TV they pull out and show it to him. All right? And you get this part. It says that this is from the book. It says the chase continues north of the city. Police helicopters are converging on Avenue 87 in Elm Grove Park. Granger nodded. They're faking. You threw them off the river. They can't admit it. They know they can hold their audience only so long. The show's got to have a snap ending quick. If they started searching the whole river, it might take all night. So they're sniffing for a scapegoat to end things with a bang. Watch. They'll catch Montag in the next 5 minutes. Now that's disturbing. They're like, they don't want to admit that this guy beat them. They want to look like they're all powerful and they make no mistakes. So what they've done is they are going to set a guy up and bust him so that everyone thinks it's Montag, so they still look like, hey, look, you can't get away with it. This is not just about holding attention, it's about holding power. Because if it looks like one guy got away with it, other people might start thinking about it. We don't want that. So what they're doing is they want to look like they have the power here. They also are treating it like it's entertainment. Again, remember in the 50s when Bradbury wrote this would have been an issue. But I remember with the O.J. Simpson trial where people were all sitting there and watching while, this white Bronco was going down the road. And even now, the Boston Marathon bombing a few years ago, I remember people sitting there and watching as they were going to catch people. Every time there's a school shooting, all of these things, people will stay wrapped in watching the news. And the news companies, every time there's even the smallest piece of news, and it's usually wrong the first few hours, but they'll still let it out there because they don't want people to turn it off because they're so worried about holding that audience. And you can't hold them with non-interesting facts. All right. So Granger says, see that? It'll be on your right up at the end of the street as our victim. See how the camera's coming in, building the scene? Suspense, long shot. Right now, some poor fellow's out for a walk, a rarity, an odd one. Don't think police don't notice the habits of queer ducks like that. Men who walk mornings just for the of it, or for reasons of insomnia. Anyway, the police have had him charted for months, years. Never know when that sort of information might be handy, and today it turns out it is very usable indeed. It saves face. Look there. So he tells him, look, here's what the cops do. They have kind of a list of people they know who there's a chance they could be out. So they're sending the hound in these areas to try to catch him. And if they do, they're going to make the picture just enough where people can't tell who it is, and they're going to catch him and say it was Montag. And that's the plan. And that's exactly what they do. The camera comes in, the person announces, look, it's Montag. There's a lot of bright lights, so you can't see it. The hound comes in, nails him, carries him away, the end, as far as everyone knows. And Granger points out your closest relative wouldn't even be able to know the difference. They've set it up so that it looks like they've caught him. Now the thing is that for them, who cares? They're not worried about actually catching Montag. He's in the clear now. But there's still this, and that's why, we're not in a steep drop anymore. We're definitely kind of leveling out, but there's still this element of what next. All right. So we got 2 more sections, and that's what we're going to find out about. What's the plan from here on? And I'll tell you, this is one of the things that comes with dystopian writing. It's this, the ending is always awkward because it's like you can't set everything right because then people reading it won't get the point. The point here is we don't want to get to this level. We want to stop it before we get to the world of Fahrenheit 451. If we don't, we get to here. So you have to kind of have a bad ending, to be honest with you. So at this point, there's meant to be this what happens next, okay? So we're going to stop here. I'm going to take some notes. We're going to come back and we're going to do part 4, and then we'll end on part 5, which is your reading for part 5 is actually fairly short. It's kind of hard to break up this last section. So, but we're going to do part 4, which is going to have the real meat of Granger's discussion, and Granger's going to talk to us about the importance of leaving a legacy, which is part of what your reflective essay is going to be about, all right? So it's great getting to spend some time with you guys, even if it is digital or virtual or whatever. and not in person, I hope you're watching this. I am looking at the analytics on these videos. A lot of you are not watching it. Please do. All right. I take a lot of time to do these. I know it feels like I just hit play and go, but I really do redo these constantly and go through them to make sure they're right. And, it's a lot of work, and it is killing my data caps at home. I'm 10 days into my billing cycle. I'm almost over already. And a lot of it is because I've made almost 30 videos for classes that average anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. So take the time and look at it, please. I really do want you to have this additional part along with the reading. All right. Okay, guys, I'll see you in the next video.